The bloodbath at Little Bighorn, the untold truth of America's most embarrassing military defeat. 210 soldiers. Just 45 minutes. Not a single one survived. June 25th, 1876. A sunny afternoon in Montana. America's most arrogant military officer led his 210 men into a place from which no one returned alive. But what did you read in your school textbook? Brave Custer, fighting until the very last moment. A hero, a legend, America's glory. The truth is, this is not a story of heroism. This is the story of 210 innocent soldiers dying because of one arrogant man's mistakes. And the American government has been hiding this truth for 150 years. Today, I'm going to tell you 3 truths that history books never told you. First, why Custer's soldiers were found dead not on that famous hill, but piled in a deep ravine. Second, the warning that could have saved 268 lives. Third, how one woman's 57-year campaign turned America's greatest military disgrace into a myth of heroism. Subscribe to this channel right now and hit the bell icon, because every week I bring you unknown historical truths like this that you will not find anywhere else. The year is 1876. America is celebrating its 100th birthday. In Philadelphia, people are excited about the invention of the telephone, dreaming of a new era. But 2,000 miles to the west, on the grasslands of Montana, a completely different America existed. Here, the nation's promises collided with an ancient way of life. 2 years earlier, gold had been discovered in the Black Hills of South Dakota. This land was sacred to the Lakota Sioux, protected by treaty. But the lust for gold erased every treaty. Thousands of miners flooded in illegally. The government broke its own laws and decided to seize the land by force. American military intelligence reported that there would be only 800 warriors in the field. Small, scattered bands who would flee at the first gunfire. An easy campaign, a quick victory. But in reality, the Lakota, the Northern Cheyenne, and the Arapaho had united. 2,500 warriors. The largest gathering in history. This single intelligence failure would cause the deaths of 210 men. Now, you need to remember 3 names. George Armstrong Custer, the so-called boy general of the Civil War. Age 36, his hair thinning. His political ambitions stalled. He wanted one great victory in his own name. He wanted to be the nation's hero. That desire was what blinded him. Sitting Bull, the holy man of the Hunkpapa Lakota, age 45. He had a vision, soldiers falling into camp like grasshoppers from the sky. He knew what was coming. He had united thousands of people through spiritual power and political genius. Crazy Horse, a warrior who had never lost a battle. He understood cavalry tactics better than most cavalry officers. He moved like a shadow and struck like lightning. The American Army's plan was a 3-pronged attack. General Terry would advance from the east, Colonel Gibbon from the west, General Crook from the south. A perfect military strategy. But there was one small problem. Crook had already been defeated at Rosebud Creek 8 days earlier. The Army did not know this. The entire plan had already collapsed. Custer still did not know. Along the Little Bighorn River, which the Lakota called the Greasy Grass, stretched a village 3 miles long. 7,000 to 8,000 people, 2,000 lodges, and among them 2,500 warriors, the finest light cavalry in the world. The 7th Cavalry was advancing with 600 men. They expected to face a few hundred warriors. The gap between that expectation and reality would become their grave. June 22nd. The 7th Cavalry column stretches for miles across the Montana Territory. 600 soldiers, 40 Arikara and Crow scouts, civilian guides and mules carrying ammunition and supplies. Each soldier carried 100 rounds of carbine ammunition and 24 rounds for his revolver. They believed this was more than enough. But right from the start, 3 fatal decisions were made. The first decision: 3 Gatling guns. General Terry had wanted to give Custer these deadly weapons. A single Gatling gun could fire 400 rounds per minute. 3 of them together could have stopped any attack. Custer said, "No, I don't need them. Too slow, they'll cause problems on the march." The real reason? If the Gatling guns came along, the artillery officers would get credit for the victory. The second decision: 2 extra cavalry companies. Terry had wanted to provide those as well. 200 more soldiers meant a far more certain victory. Custer refused. The reason was simple: the credit for victory would have to be shared. The third decision: each soldier was given only 100 rounds, instead of the standard 150. The remaining ammunition stayed behind on the pack mules. All 3 decisions were made for one single reason: he had to win alone. All the glory had to be his. On the night of June 24th, Custer's Crow Scouts climbed to the top of Wolf Mountain to a place called the Crow's Nest. What they saw in the early morning light was hard to believe. In the valley below, the pony herd was so large the entire plain had turned black. Thousands and thousands of horses. In the distance, smoke rising from thousands of lodges. Scout Mitch Boyer turned to Custer and said, "If you go in there, you will never come out." Custer raised his binoculars. He said, "I can't see anything." "You're exaggerating." The scouts counted at least 2,000 lodges. Simple math. Average 5 warriors per 3 lodges meant at least 2,500 fighters. Custer said, "Impossible. You're seeing things." That same night, another report came in. Lakota outriders had spotted the cavalry column. Military doctrine demanded, "Stop, wait for Terry and Gibbon, then attack together." Custer thought, "Then the village will escape. The glory will slip away." He made the decision to attack alone. The Arikara scouts began singing death songs. The Crow Scouts painted their faces, not for battle, but for death. Several scouts left on the spot. They refused to participate in what they knew was suicide. Custer laughed. He called them cowards. June 25th, noon. Custer divided his command one final time. Major Marcus Reno would take 130 men and strike the village directly from the south. Captain Frederick Benteen would take 125 men on a reconnaissance to the west and south. A practically useless mission that removed 1/3 of his fighting strength. Custer himself would take 210 men and hit from the rear from the north. Behind them, the pack train with extra ammunition and 135 guards. The plan assumed the enemy would flee, but this enemy would not flee. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Reno and his 130 men charged toward the village. The ground ahead was clear. Their speed was good. The soldiers were excited. Then the earth shook. Warriors rose from the grass. Not hundreds, but thousands. The village did not end. Miles and miles of lodges. Winchester and Henry repeating rifles opened fire from every direction. Reno's charge lasted exactly 14 minutes. The scout, Bloody Knife, standing beside him, had his head blown apart. Blood and brain matter splattered across Reno's face. In that moment, Major Reno completely broke down. He ordered a retreat. The retreat became a rout. The wounded were left behind. Men spurred their horses and fled. Crossing the Little Bighorn River, warriors fired from both banks. The water turned red. Horses and soldiers fell into the water together. 40 men killed or wounded in 30 minutes. The survivors scrambled up the bluffs and found themselves surrounded on a hilltop. Meanwhile, Custer was moving north, riding straight toward destruction. 3:30 in the afternoon. From the high ground at Weir Point, Custer saw the full picture for the first time. A village 3 miles long, 7,000 people. And the warriors, they were not running, they were coming, thousands of them. In that moment, for the first time in his life, George Armstrong Custer understood that he had made a terrible mistake. But it was far too late. He sent his last message with trumpeter John Martin to Benteen. "Come on, big village, be quick. Bring packs, bring the ammunition, hurry." Martin would be the last man to see Custer's battalion alive. At Medicine Tail Coulee, Custer tried to ford the river with 2 companies, to push directly into the village, perhaps to take women and children hostage and regain control of the situation. Gall blocked the crossing. The water ran red. At that moment, Crazy Horse came from behind. With the speed of lightning, screaming, he cut the battalion in 2. On Calhoun Hill, Captain Keogh was trying to hold the last defensive line. A good soldier, experienced. His men fired 2 disciplined volleys. Then, Crazy Horse struck from 3 directions at once. 7 minutes. The entire company was annihilated. Keogh's horse Comanche was shot in 7 places but survived. He would be the only living creature left on that part of the field. On Last Stand Hill, Custer had only 40 men left. The ammunition was nearly gone. Some soldiers were stripping cartridges from the bodies of their dead comrades. Some were scratching at the hard earth with knives and tin cups, trying to dig shallow rifle pits. 60 soldiers who had fled into a deep ravine were looking for shelter. They found only death. Later, archaeologists would find 28 bodies piled on top of one another. They had thrown away their weapons to run faster. These were not heroes. These were terrified men making one last desperate attempt to survive. Grass was set on fire. The smoke reduced visibility to nearly nothing. The temperature was 90 degrees Fahrenheit. No water. White Bull, nephew of Sitting Bull, later said, "We surrounded them the way water surrounds a stone." Then the final charge came from every direction at once. 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Silence. 210 soldiers. None remaining. The most complete military annihilation in history. The year is 1983. A grass fire burned across part of the battlefield, and it revealed what had been hidden for 107 years. A team, led by Dr. Richard Fox, mapped the entire field with metal detectors. Every spent cartridge, every bullet was identified. The results changed history. The empty casing showed that soldiers had been firing while running, not while standing and fighting. There was no evidence of an organized defensive line anywhere. One warrior's rifle left spent casings stretching from Calhoun Hill all the way through Last Stand Hill to the deep ravine. He had been chasing soldiers across the entire battlefield. A soldier's skeleton was found 400 yards from the main position, an arrowhead in his spine. He had been shot while running away. There was no sign of heroism, only the sign of a desperate and failed attempt to survive. 28 bodies piled on top of each other in the deep ravine. These men had been looking for shelter. This had nothing in common with the last stand myth. The average soldier had the chance to fire only 5 to 7 rounds. In the time it took them to fire one shot, the warriors fired 40 to 60. Technologically, this was not a battle. It was a one-sided destruction. All of this evidence says one thing. This was not a hero's last stand. This was the failed survival attempt of terrified men. When the news reached Washington after the battle, the nation was stunned. The finest cavalry in America, annihilated? How was this possible? An answer was needed, one that would cover up the truth. Elizabeth Bacon Custer was beautiful, sharp-minded, and ruthless in protecting her husband's memory. She wrote books, she gave lectures, she gave interviews. Officers who tried to tell the truth faced her lawyers. Major Reno became the villain, the coward who had failed to come to Custer's aid. Benteen became the jealous officer. Custer became the tragic hero, a man betrayed. Paintings were created showing Custer standing tall on the hilltop, a pistol in each hand, enemies closing in from every side. An image of heroism. The public wanted to believe it. The truth was that Custer's body was found lying on the ground, relatively unmutilated. 2 bullet wounds. Not a single sign of the defiant, heroic pose depicted in the paintings. Elizabeth Custer lived until 1933. For 57 years she protected the myth. She silenced every person who dared to contradict it. The truth, buried beneath the soil, was waiting. When the fire burned across the field in 1983, the evidence emerged, and 107 years of myth turned to dust. What the Lakota and Cheyenne warriors wanted that day was to send a message. We can fight. Come and negotiate with us. The result was the opposite. When the news of the battle reached America, the nation erupted in rage. Congress sent more soldiers, more weapons, more resolve. Within 1 year, every remaining resistance had been crushed. Crazy Horse surrendered and was mysteriously murdered within months. Sitting Bull fled to Canada and eventually returned to captivity. The buffalo herds were systematically destroyed. The railroad came. The walls of the reservation went up. The free life of the open prairie was gone forever. The victory at Little Bighorn became a catastrophe. Today, at the Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument, there are 2 memorials. White marble, where the soldiers fell. Red granite, where the warriors fought. For the first time in 1991, the warriors were officially recognized. 2 truths, standing together. But the most important truth is this. The 210 soldiers at Little Bighorn are not dishonored because they were not heroes. They were ordinary people. Irish and German immigrants who had barely learned English. Young men who had never seen battle. Experienced sergeants who followed bad orders to their deaths. They were victims of one man's ambition, and that man's name was Custer, the man who sent 210 people to their deaths for the sake of his own glory. Little Bighorn was not lost. It was thrown away. The next time you hear someone say, Custer's last stand, remember the real story. Heroes do not lead men into slaughter for the sake of their own fame. If this video showed you something new, hit like and share it. And tell me in the comments, do you think this truth should have been in the history books? And if you want to hear more untold stories of history like this, subscribe right now. In the next video, I will tell you about another American battle that was completely erased from the textbooks.